Hey guys, Apox Fox here. It's been a pretty crazy year. For one, this is my first year of consistently uploading on YouTube. Well, sort of. I began this year with 50 subscribers, and now we're almost at 10,000, which is pretty insane to think about. First off, I want to say a huge thank you to you guys for watching my videos. It seriously means the world to me that I can keep doing something that I'm passionate about, and you guys enjoy it, so thanks. Also, in December last year, I made a video where I basically speed ran reviewing the games that I didn't get around to making a full video on. And in that same video, I also made a commitment to myself to review every single game I play in 2021. It doesn't really make sense to review those games again for this video, so instead I decided to rank my top 10 games I played this year. Now, they aren't all games that came out in 2021, but either way, these are really the games that define the year for me, and I think all of them are worth playing. I reviewed over 50 games this year, and obviously they can't all be on this list. However, I did want to make a few honorable mentions before we start. Omori is one of those games that sits in your mind for months after playing it. It was heartfelt, emotional, even terrifying, and the gameplay loop with its high-energy turn-based combat was really fun. It also might have my favorite soundtrack out of any game I played this year, which should just tell you how great the rest of these games on the list are. Also, I want to mention Skyward Sword HD for the Nintendo Switch. I was super happy with how this remaster came out, and it definitely made me appreciate a Zelda game that I didn't care that much about before. And finally, Shovel Knight was a pretty fun arcade experience. The only reason it didn't make it on the list was because it doesn't have the same replayability as the rest of these games, but I would still recommend you play all of these honorable mentions. Alright, kicking things off at number 10, we have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. This game basically saved the Star Wars games for me. The lightsaber combat was super fluid with tons of different stylish options, from customizing your lightsaber to all the really cool Force abilities. I think it's probably got the best story we have ever experienced in a Star Wars game to date, with characters that don't just check the classic Star Wars character boxes, but instead they feel completely new and exciting for the franchise. If you like games with precise sword combat and very solid level design, or even if you're just a fan of Star Wars in general, I think there's a lot to love from Jedi Fallen Order. At number 9, we have our first From Software game. Yes, there are a couple on this list. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice really destroyed me mentally, dude. I feel like it's the first actually hard game that I've ever completed, and since it introduced me to the world of From Software games, it holds a very special place in my heart. There's just so much creativity in the enemies. Whoever came up with this giant ape guy must have had a really rough childhood. The ability to grapple your way around rooftops and do stealth takedowns is just so cool. And the way that the level design weaves in and out of itself is really impressive. If you like the Soulsborne games, Sekiro is pretty much a must-play. My 8th favorite game from this year was Dead Cells. Honestly, I wasn't going to add Dead Cells to this list because it was competing with some other really great games, but the thing is, Dead Cells is one of those games that I still play pretty much every week after reviewing it. Even after 80 hours, I still feel like I'm improving at my skills every time I turn the game on. Dead Cells is a roguelite, which means every time you die, you have to go all the way back to the start of the game, and you can feel a tangible sense of improvement every time you attempt to run. The combat starts out a bit slow and janky, but once you understand the flow of things, it really becomes fast-paced and rewarding to master. If you enjoy games where you can just throw on some music or a podcast in the background and just turn your brain off for hours, Dead Cells feels like it might be the perfect game for you. Already at the top 7, the rest of these games were very hard to figure out which order I wanted to list them. I feel like the next games perfectly summed up the year for me, so it was really difficult to find a place for them. But I think I'm happy with this order, so at number 7, we have Celeste. If you want to talk about games that hit you in ways you can't put into words, Celeste has that power. The story was so simple and subtle, yet its tougher concepts were extremely deep and relatable. They somehow found a way to perfectly sync the themes of the story into the gameplay. Every time you make it through a difficult section, it feels like the main character is overcoming something internal. It turns the already challenging and fun platforming into something much bigger. It's not just that though, the game is one hell of a platformer in general. The climbing and dashing mechanics are so easy to pick up and go wild. It's also a super hard game. You can spend an hour on one really challenging section, but the feeling of making it to the other side is really unmatched. I think this is a true gamer's game, so if you love playing video games, play Celeste. At number 6, we actually have another roguelike, Hades. While I do love this game for a lot of the same reasons that I love Dead Cells, Hades just felt more engaging. There's a real story here with its own crazy spin on Greek mythology lore, and I've always loved Greek mythology, but seeing the Supergiant developers' vision of these characters is pretty magical. The voice acting is probably the best I've ever heard in a game. The buffing system is super innovative, yet a no-brainer for a roguelike style game. Even the concepts of Hades' son trying to escape the underworld is just so cool. Out of the 2 roguelikes on this list, Hades won me over just slightly more for different reasons, so if I had to only recommend one, it would have to be Hades. Halfway through this list at number 5, we have a spin-off from the Yakuza series called Judgement. Yakuza is a very important series to me, especially because the first video I ever made this year was a review for Yakuza 0. Explaining Judgement in a few sentences is pretty hard, but I'm gonna try my best. You play as Yagami, who used to be a lawyer, but now is a private detective solving a murder case in Tokyo. This is in the same universe as the rest of the Yakuza games, so if you play Judgement, expect a really gripping story with tons of twists at every corner. Now, as far as the gameplay goes, Judgement is really something special. First off, it looks incredible. Roaming the streets of Tokyo and checking out all the corners of the city is a lot of fun. There are so many mini-games in Judgement. I enjoyed pretty much all of them except for Mahjong, but what's new? And the combat is what really made me fall in love with this game. There are so many combo moves and brutal heat actions that feel so great to use. I think that the Yakuza series isn't for everybody, but give it a chance. I think Judgement would be a great place to start. At number 4, we finally have the only game on this list that came out in 2021, Valheim. I feel like I try to find a way to recommend this game in like all of my videos. It's like a hybrid baby of Skyrim and Minecraft, yet it's got this completely fresh flair to it that makes it feel brand new. I also really like this game because the head developer commented on my review for it. That's not really why I love it, but I just wanted to brag. This is one of the only survival games in the past few years that actually felt finished when it was released, which is pretty hard to come by these days. There's this great element of progression in Valheim that really lets you take things at your own pace. First you grind for some materials, then you build a base, then you tackle a demon tree god in the Black Forest, rinse and repeat. Accomplishing goals you set for yourself is the magical formula that Valheim holds, and it would have been my favorite game of the year if it wasn't for the top 3 of this list. Speaking of which, at number 3 we have Dark Souls 3. I promise that wasn't planned, but this game had a really strong impression on me. Not just because I had many sleepless nights trying to defeat the Nameless King, but because of the feeling of actually being able to say I beat this game. If you beat a Dark Souls game, I think you deserve bragging rights, but that's just me. Anyways, this was my first Souls game besides Sekiro, if that counts, and it really turned into one of my favorite series of all time. The level design of each area is amazing. I love the way that different players can have completely different experiences based on which path or upgrades they take. This is another one of those games that is easy to pick up, but impossible to master. But the simple combat mechanics go a very long way. I cannot wait for Elden Ring next year, and you better believe I'm streaming it, baby, so stick around for that. At number 2, we have CrossCode. When I first reviewed CrossCode on my channel, I called it one of the most underrated games I have ever played, and I'm gonna stick to that. CrossCode has a really cool plot. Basically, you play as a player stuck inside an MMO game. Not only does this make it really easy to joke around about breaking the fourth wall, but it's also easy to connect with the characters and believe the story as it unfolds. It does have a lot of classic RPG elements reminiscent of Chrono Trigger and A Link to the Past, but it's the combat that really sets CrossCode apart from the rest. Being able to use the second analog stick to aim your projectiles and unlocking all of the different elemental combos is so much fun. Plus, it uses all of these mechanics flawlessly in its addictive puzzle sections. It feels really rewarding to dig a little deeper and find some games that you wouldn't even know about if you hadn't made the effort to search for them. And I already can't wait for the next game I can call the most underrated game of all time. And finally, for my number 1 game I played this year, this was really a no-brainer to me since it easily became one of my top 3 games of all time, Hollow Knight. After playing so many games one after another, it becomes harder and harder to find one that totally grips you from start to finish. Hollow Knight not only did that, but made me want to come back for more. It's kind of a shock that it took me this long to play this game, but I am so glad I gave it a try. Exploring the tangled and disorienting map for the first time is a gaming experience I wish I could have again. Finding all 47 bosses and being forced to master their rhythmic movements completely sucked me in. No matter how much I wanted to pull my hair out, there wasn't a single moment of doubt that I couldn't improve and eventually prevail. Do I even need to get into the soundtrack of Hollow Knight? The atmosphere here is just unmatched. If there were any games out there that I think everybody who plays video games should play, Hollow Knight is one of those games. So what were your favorite games you played this year? Definitely let me know, because I don't know if you can tell, I love talking about games. I also wanted to give a huge thank you to you guys for making this an amazing year. I never expected I would get the chance to connect with so many like-minded people, and because of that, making YouTube videos for you guys has become my favorite thing to do. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, you should consider subscribing. I've got a whole bunch lined up for 2022, and I cannot wait to share it with you all. Also, I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you want to help me out and watch some fun videos along the way, subscribe. Anyways, thanks for watching, and thank you all for a really special year. Much love, keep on gaming to the fullest, and I'll see you next year. Peace.